crunch time in the URC. It is the final round of regular season matches, and by Saturday evening we are going to know which of these 10 teams have made it into the top 8, which teams are in the top 7 and will be playing Champions Cup rugby by next season, who's in the top 4 and will have a home quarter final, and who's in the top 2 and has the seeding advantage for potential semi-finals and even a final. There is so much to play for all of these teams, and even for the teams that I haven't included in the table that are out of the playoff picture. They've got the motivation that they're going to be going up against one of their national rivals, because you have got matches between the Welsh teams, between the South African teams and between the Irish teams. And the way that URC have dubbed this is that it's the race to the 8. Yes, those 8 positions in the playoffs are massive. For all the other teams that don't make the top 8, their season is over. They're going to be on the beach next week having to watch the other side. Actually, when you put it like that, it doesn't sound too bad. No, these are professional rugby players. They don't want to be on the beach. That's me and you. We want to be on the beach. But no, the table, I mean, just when you look at some of the fixtures, and I'll go through each of them in turn, some of them that jump out: Edinburgh travelling to Benetton, shootout for 7th spot. The loser probably dropping out of the picture altogether, with Lions, Ospreys, Connacht waiting if someone makes an error. Ulster could go up, they could drop down, and Champions Cup is something they have to get. Stormers could drop down. So a lot of motivation. Even when you look higher up the table, the Bulls and Munster, they want to keep those top 2 spots, because that seeding not only works for the quarterfinals, which they know they've got at home, but for the semi-finals should they get there, and even the final if they're the top seed team. So massive. There is obviously, whilst it's been called the race to the 8, there is the extra little twist in the story that the Sharks provided last Friday. By winning the Challenge Cup, they take a Champions Cup spot. So now only the top 7 will be playing in the top tier of club rugby next season. That's the place you want to be. The Champions Cup is where it's at. That's where all the prestige, all the crowds, all the attention and money is. That's where the best players are. And yeah, teams are desperately going to be trying to fight for one of those top 7 spots and joining the Sharks. There is, by the way, a chance that only the top 6 get into Champions Cup if the team that finish 8th go on and win the URC. So the 7th position isn't necessarily a guarantee. Anyway, my head's starting to hurt thinking about that, because it's highly unlikely that the team that finish 8th will win. But anyway, let me move on. Let's go through the fixtures. And it actually starts quite gently on Friday night, and I'm quite grateful for that, because at the same time there's the Premiership semi-final between Northampton and Saracens, which I'll have Northampton Saracens on my main screen, and the small screen I will have the URC, because when you look at the fixtures, realistically it should be 2 comfortable home wins. When you look at this, with the greatest of respect to Zebre, Glasgow should put them to the sword, and Glasgow, who will be disappointed at some of their form lately, some of the games that they've let slip that they feel like they shouldn't have done, nothing more that they could ask for than to be at home, to gather a bit of momentum going into the playoffs, and to be playing the team that's at the foot of the table, who, they've got some good players, Zebre, and they will get better. But at the moment, the Zebra that Blair Kinghorn sat on after the Champions Cup final would probably give us sterner test as Zebre at the minute. As for the other game, Leinster against Connacht, poor old Connacht. The whipping boys of Irish rugby, not whipping boys, the minnows of Irish rugby, they actually do really well. They punch above their weight, bearing in mind the resources that they have. And Galway's a tough place to go, but they've got to go to Dublin. And they're going to be facing a Leinster team who will be gutted having lost the Champions Cup final, and will be looking to grind whoever they play into dust to take out their frustration. I fear that will be what happens to Connacht. Leinster are going to be angry. They lost the URC last season by resting players for the Champions Cup and lost both. They don't want to lose both again this time. So even though it's only 6 days between Champions Cup final and this match, I still expect them to put a very strong Leinster team out in Dublin and to beat Connacht, who have an outside chance if they can upset the form book. We will see. And then we're on to Saturday, where there are, the fixtures. I love all the derby matches. So you've got the all South Africa ties, you've got Stormers against Lions, and for the Lions it's quite simple. They must win. If they want any shot at Champions Cup rugby, they must win. There is a chance that they could get bonus points and still make the playoffs. You might argue unlikely, but it could happen. And you wouldn't put it past them getting try bonus points for sure, the way that they play. Now Hambo and co can just score from anywhere, wild attacking players. And actually, when you look at the way the Stormers play, this is either going to be that they're going to cancel each other out and it'll be 6-3, or it could be 48 points to 46. It could be one of them. Potentially an insane game. Oh, poor Damien Vellemser. Of course, he's injured. Let's get a different picture up. There you go. Yeah, the Lions have got... They should see it as a free hit. They're going away to Cape Town. They have to win, but maybe the expectation isn't on them. Maybe there's actually more expectation on Stormers, who at one point looked like they were going to finish a bit higher in the table. They've lost the option of a home quarter-final. So they're definitely going to be travelling next weekend in the playoffs, but they don't want to drop down too far below. At the moment, it looks like if they win, they play Glasgow away. They definitely prefer that to going away to Leinster. So Stormers, I would suggest, will be very keen to make sure they win, not least a bit of pride against a fellow South African team. Lions have been the giant slayers lately, beating Leinster, admittedly a weakened Leinster team, and Glasgow, scoring 4 tries when they were down a man. Heroic stuff. I think there will be lots of tries in this one. I think the Stormers should just have enough. I'm going to say the Lions will get the bonus points to potentially get them into 8th spot. We'll see. And while I'm talking about the South African derbies, I've obviously been saying this on the channel for a while. I am heading to South Africa next month, less than a month away now. And I'm going to be there. I'm going to catch a bit of Craven Week, catch the 2 test matches between Ireland and South Africa. Later on in the year, I'm going to be coming back to, funnily enough, Johannesburg and Cape Town to watch the 2 New Zealand tests as well. But for this first trip, I just want to say thank you to, and also for helping support this video, and new hotels and resorts. They are supporting me on my trip to South Africa. They're helping the channel, helping me get a load of great content while I'm out there in South Africa. So I thought I'd just give them a little shout and say that if you're a rugby fan, perhaps from Ireland, who's heading out for the Irish tests, make sure you get to anewhotels.com and see one of the lovely homes you could have whilst you're up north or in KZN. Actually, on KwaZulu-Natal, looking forward to getting down there. And when I'm heading up the coast from Durban for a couple of days, I'm gonna head to Hluthlue. I hope I've said that correctly. A new hotel, Hluthlue, so I can go to Imfaluzi Game Reserve, which is the oldest game reserve in South Africa. Very much looking forward to that. Anyway, thank you, A New Hotels and Resorts, for that. And speaking of Durban, it's the Bulls of Pretoria who are going to be heading there for their final regular season game. They know, though, that they're going to be back in Pretoria for the knockouts. They know they've got a home quarter final, but the Bulls, the prize for them is a potential, should they make it through that game next week, home semi-final, and depending on how Munster go, potential final, should they be the highest seeded team and make it there. That is such a massive carrot that is dangling there for them. It is 13th against 2nd. So ordinarily, when you look at the URC table, you'd think, well, that'll be an easy one to call. But they're playing against the Sharks, who are unpredictable. They can look absolutely amazing like they did last Friday, winning that trophy in the Challenge Cup final. And then they can look pretty ordinary, which they have done at many times this season in the URC. Which version of the Sharks are we going to get? Now, having won the Challenge Cup last weekend, I was sort of tempted to think, oh, they're just going to rest up all their big guns, aren't they? Because, they'll have been just getting on it all week, celebrating and partying and relaxing and showing off their new trophy up around Umhlanga, up the coast. But on the flip side, it is their last chance to play in front of their home crowd this season, and they're playing against one of their rivals. And also, there are Springbok spots up for grabs for a bunch of these players. There's an opportunity to press your case for national selection. So I'd be very surprised if the Sharks throw the towel in on this one. I think they're going to want to do a job. So I think they're going to put out a strong team, which throws this one a little bit more up in the air, because the last 2 trips to Durban and the Bulls have lost. This does feel like Bulls with a little bit more about them this year. Look at the league table for evidence of that. They're going to need to tighten up their defence, but their attack is insane. And I think they'll be able to match, well, they'll certainly be able to match the Sharks up front better than Gloucester did. And I think that will mean that they've got just enough in them to come through what should be a tight game. They will wrap up 2nd spot and then wait for the Munster result, which is the last game of the weekend. Benetton v Edinburgh, I've already talked about it. Shootout for 7th spot and a Champions Cup spot. That is a massive carrot. Regardless of how the playoffs go, playing in the Champions Cup next season is huge for these 2 teams. To get the crowds to turn out, to get the TV eyeballs on you, which helps with the sponsors and everything. It's massive. So this is a huge game, and the fact it's come down to a straight shootout between two teams that are stacked with international players. Edinburgh are going to be really frustrated by what happened in the Munster game a couple of weeks ago. They're going to be really motivated. Benetton, again, a team that have blown a bit hot and cold in front of their home crowds. I expect them to turn it on, but I'm actually going to go for a narrow Edinburgh victory in that one. And then we've got the Welsh teams that are going to be facing off against each other. Cardiff against Ospreys. Ospreys should win. It's a long shot that they qualify from 10th, but they could. And both of these games, all of these games are happening at the Millennium Stadium. Scarlets against Dragons as well. Double header called Judgment Day, which is exactly what this weekend is. It is Judgment Day for these teams. I expect, and again, the last game of the weekend is maybe the one, well, it could be massive, that. Munster against Ulster. So, interesting, with the Premiership final game of the season, regular season, all the games kicked off at the same time so that no one got an advantage knowing what they had to do. Do you think that's how the URC should do it? Actually, for what it's worth, I actually prefer this, and I quite like being able to follow the story unfolding as it goes. And I don't think Ulster knowing what they need to do going into the match is going to change anything really, because they're going to be desperate to beat Munster regardless, and Munster are going to be desperate to beat Ulster because Munster want to finish top of the table. They're so good at Thomond Park. They've proved they can do it on the road, but that home crowd, the financial boost that would give them if they were to play a quarter-final at Thomond Park and a potential semi-final, and if they get there, it would mean the final would be at Thomond Park as well. That is massive. And, well, they're the holders, and they're not going to give up the grip on that trophy very easily. That should be a belter of a game. I expect Munster to win that. And Ulster, they managed to do it against Leinster the other week. I think it might be a bridge too far. Ulster could drop down. They could drop out of Champions Cup rugby, depending on how the other games go. I don't think they will. I think they're probably worth a bonus point, which should wrap that one up. The weekend's going to be great, isn't it? I can't wait. I'll be here on the channel, of course, as the games are happening. So make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss anything. Help me spread the word. Give the video a thumbs up. I will see you on the next one. Enjoy the rugby.